Merit and demerit goods, I'm going to do these together because it's an easy section, really. Looks like a big section, but it's not. It's a very straightforward section. So merit goods are goods that are better for people than they realise, so there's more private benefits than perceived to be. And they also tend to be associated with goods that produce positive externalities in consumption, we're really looking at. So maybe there's more private benefits, but also maybe there's some external benefits as well that's going to a third party. And until fairly recently, people didn't really understand the healthy benefits of oily fish, but it's a good example of a merit good where people maybe underconsumed it in the past because they didn't realise how good it was for them. Maybe some types of fish as well could be considered a demerit good where people overconsume them, with mercury contents and things like that. I'm pretending that I know about science, and I really don't. I'm a social scientist. So the reason that merit goods cause market failure, I've prepared a slide earlier. Because the consumer is unaware of the benefits of the product and they cannot feel the full external benefits, especially if it's causing external benefits for third parties, they underconsume it. So there's underproduction in the market, and this is allocatively inefficient because too few scarce resources are being allocated to production. So if we look at demerit goods now, this is just going to be the opposite story. It's goods that their consumption is more harmful to people than they actually realise or realised, and there's more private cost than realised, and they're usually associated with negative externalities in consumption as well. So it means that demerit goods often have external costs as well. So like merit goods have external benefits, demerit goods often have external costs. So red meat, although I love a nice steak, it's not meant to be healthy for you if you are eating it every day. And until relatively recently, we didn't really understand these types of things, but this might mean that people overconsume it. Here's something I got from the Lancet, which is a medical journal a few years ago. These are some different types of drugs, and I don't know why I sounded so happy when I introduced that, but they are. And we can see here harm to the users and harm to others. So the harm to others is these external costs, whereas the harm to the users are the private costs. But some of these are really very, very interesting to see how alcohol has so many costs. And I'm not exactly sure how they calculated these costs. You'd have to look at the journal and look at the article that this came from. But tobacco as well, and alcohol's legal, and it's meant to be more harmful according to this and the overall harm score than heroin and crack cocaine, which are horrible drugs that are very rightly banned, and we don't want people to come into harm's way. And you look at the even in terms of if we just take out the external costs, even if we should just look at the harm to the users, if we compare it to LSD, which again is an illegal drug, and compare that to alcohol consumption, much more harmful to the user there. So I'm demonstrating here that there's some information failure, and information failure is really at the heart of what's causing these negative externalities. It's really at the heart of what's causing these demerit goods and merit goods to occur, because people just really aren't fully aware of the benefits or the costs. So why are demerit goods a type of market failure? Well, people don't realise the harmful effects. They overconsume, they're overproduced, too many scarce resources are allocated to production, and this is allocatively inefficient. So here's an important factor to consider. Some things are really clear-cut, scientific. We know that smoking is bad for you now. We know that people maybe 50 years ago didn't realise quite how harmful it was to them. There was a lot of misinformation out there, especially with the advertising of it. But some things aren't quite so clear-cut, and it becomes this kind of normative judgment, normative statement that you're making. So Some people would think that birth control is a merit good, and some people, because of their religious beliefs, they might think it is a demerit good. So there's lots of different ethical questions that sometimes come into this, because we're trying to decide whether things are, you know, better for people or worse for people. And that definition of what's better and worse is often quite normative, unless it's, you know, something kind of scientific and to do with diet and health. It can often be not a normative, you know, a value-based judgment. Is it better for you to read classical works of fiction rather than the Radio Times? You know, who knows? That's down to your own judgment, really. So often some of these merit goods and demerit goods can be quite normative, so based on value judgments. Okay, you do need to know some diagrams. This is in the specification. So let's set these up. S1, D1, Q1. Here we go. And what we're going to do is, because I started talking about merit goods first, I'm going to call this merit, and this one's going to be my demerit, and they're very simple to do. They are basically just positive and negative externality diagrams in consumption. So D1 and S1 and Q1 and P1 represent the actual equilibrium, and my D2 and Q2 and P2 are going to represent the socially optimal. So with merit goods, they are underconsumed. Consumption should be further out, and it should be there. And with demerit goods, you know, we'd be willing to pay a much higher price if we could realise the full benefits of it. And with demerit goods, they are overconsumed, so it should be way less consumption that's going if we could understand or we could feel all those external costs or private costs. Okay, so if you did want to shade in the deadweight loss, you go from actual equilibrium, look up, look down. Let's have a look where that other curve is. It's above in this case, so we can see the little pointer pointing, or the pointy tip of the triangle pointing that way, representing that there's underconsumption here. And then we go from our actual equilibrium, look up, look down. It's down in this one for the other curve, and that's the deadweight loss. Little pointy bit of the triangle. I bet that's got a name. Someone should leave a comment to tell me what this pointy bit here is called. But we can see it's pointing the other way to represent that there's overconsumption in demerit goods and underconsumption for merit goods. So it's based on value judgments and normative values, normative statements. May be subject to positive and negative externalities in consumption. So merit goods, positive externalities in consumption, demerit goods, negative externalities in consumption. It results usually from imperfect information, so people don't have the information to make fully informed decisions. We've just been able to illustrate it there. You don't have to anymore if you're on the new spec, be able to label it with that. But this is important as well. Not every merit good or demerit good causes positive or negative externalities in consumption. So not every positive or negative externality in consumption is merit or demerit good.